Weed has one of the best PR teams in modern culture. It is natural. It is chill. It is safer than alcohol. It helps people relax. It helps them sleep. It helps them laugh at nothing for 2 hours and then eat half a bakery. And for most people, that is more or less the story. But not for everyone. For a lot of people, weed is not some harmless background habit. It is not cute. It is not spiritual. It is not just a plant. It is a serious drug that can quietly flatten your life. That is unpopular to say. It is also true. We do not think weed should be illegal. For most users, it is either not a problem or only a mild one. But about 20% of people who have ever tried cannabis go on to develop cannabis use disorder. Some of them become severely addicted. That is an astonishingly high number. And many people who start smoking have no idea that they are rolling the dice on something this consequential. In the US, daily or near-daily weed use has been rising for years, long before legalization. There are now more daily cannabis users than daily alcohol drinkers, and many of those users consume a lot. In 2023, about 1 in 15 adult Americans were dealing with some form of cannabis addiction. In England, cannabis is the #1 drug teenagers seek help for. So today, forget medical use. Forget casual users. Forget the people with only mild issues. This is about the people who are either already addicted or drifting toward it without realizing what is happening. Weed usually gets discussed as a teenage problem, which makes sense. Using any drug while your brain is under construction is a bad idea. But that is not what this is. This is a more adult conversation. This is about what weed can do to you in your 20s and 30s, when you are supposed to be building a life and may instead be slowly sedating it. We are going to combine research with personal experience, because unfortunately, we have plenty of both. This script was written by someone who used weed every day for 15 years before quitting. So, let's get into it. Most people do not become addicted in one dramatic moment. There is no villain music, no hard cut, no obvious point where you say, yes, this is the part where my life starts shrinking. Usually, it happens by accident. You start smoking for the same reasons most people do. Curiosity, stress, boredom, fun. It is around. Your friends are doing it. It makes things feel brighter. Music sounds better. Movies get funnier. Food becomes an event. Time softens. The edges come off the day. And for a while, it can feel great. Weed can make life feel more vivid, more interesting, more tolerable. It can be comforting. It can feel like a shortcut to ease. A reliable little ritual that asks nothing from you. That is why it slides in so easily. The clearest thing to watch is how often you use it. That is not the whole story, but it is the loudest clue. If you are using weed every day, or almost every day, that is not neutral. That is not casual. That is a real warning sign. Daily users face up to a 30% risk of developing cannabis use disorder. And the nasty part is that the damage often unfolds so slowly that you do not feel it happening. Not really. Not until you have been living inside it for years. What begins as the occasional high starts to become normal, then expected, then built into the architecture of your week. Your weekends start revolving around weed, or slowly shift toward activities you can do while high. Some hobbies become less appealing. Some responsibilities become easier to postpone. Then weed creeps into weekdays. Then most weekdays. Then all of them. And somewhere in there it becomes your default setting. Over time, the drug changes. The joyful, heart-opening part starts to fade. The novelty burns off. The magic leaks out. What replaces it is not exactly pleasure. More like relief. A comfortable numbness. a soft shell between you and the world. That shell can feel protective, but it does not make you stronger. It does not make you braver. It does not help you process pain, and it just helps you avoid feeling it for a while. Weed becomes less of a good time and more of a hiding place. So here is a brutally simple test. Stop, not tomorrow. Not after this stressful week. Not after the birthday party, the vacation, the breakup, the project deadline, the long weekend, the rough patch, the vague future point where you imagine becoming a more serious person. Today. Quit for 4 weeks. If that feels easy, fine. Good. You are probably in a better place than many people watching this. If that feels difficult or impossible, or if part of your brain is already bargaining with the idea, that should tell you something. Once weed becomes a daily or near-daily habit, the cumulative damage can be enormous. But before we get to that, let's talk about another thing that can quietly become dangerous while you are not paying attention. Your data. Today's sponsor, Incogni, helps reduce your risk of scams, harassment, and identity theft. Data brokers collect and sell your personal information constantly. That data can end up in the wrong hands, which means spam if you are lucky, and much worse if you are not. The problem is that most people do not even know where their data is being sold, and getting it removed manually is a bureaucratic nightmare. Even if you do it once, new brokers pop up and the whole thing starts again. Incogni handles that for you. You give Incogni permission to act on your behalf, and it automatically requests that your personal data be deleted and kept off the market. And it also offers custom removals for specific sites that exposed your data without permission. Incogni is the first and only data removal service verified by Deloitte. Use the code KURSGESACT to get 60% off annual plans and buy yourself a little peace of mind. Now, back to weed. For people with a real weed problem, life can start moving in slow motion. Not in some poetic, introspective way. In the bad way. The addiction keeps you where you are while your body keeps aging and everyone around you keeps moving. And when you are young, this can be hard to spot, because youth covers for a lot. In your 20s, life drags you forward whether you are ready or not. School, jobs, university, new cities, new friends, new relationships. You are surrounded by motion, even if you are half asleep. The conveyor belt still moves, so stagnation can hide. And that is the danger. Because your 20s are not just any years. They are absurdly valuable years. Your body is probably as strong as it will ever be. You can stay out late, recover faster, travel cheap, take risks, embarrass yourself, fall in love badly, start over, move cities, pick up hobbies, build friendships, try on identities, and get away with a level of chaos that would be exhausting later. It is the easiest period of your life to build a healthy social world. Which matters, because a strong social life is one of the best predictors of long-term happiness. You also probably have fewer responsibilities than you ever will again. And you can spend all of that time high, scrolling reposts on Reddit, watching the same videos, making grand plans you never start, turning whole evenings, or whole weekends, whole years into warm static. That trade may not feel terrible in the moment. Later is when it bites. And then your 30s arrive, and the whole equation changes. Around this point, most people naturally cut down on weed or stop altogether. They get busier, more selective, more serious about how they spend their time. This is one of life's major sorting moments, and if you are still drifting while everyone else is choosing, you can get left behind very fast. Your social life after 30 is not the same game it was at 22. Friendships now need maintenance, intentionality, real effort. People have jobs, partners, travel plans, kids, stress, obligations, bad backs, shared calendars. Time becomes scarce. Casual hangouts become logistical operations. And weed addiction works against you on multiple levels. For some people, using more and more weed worsens social anxiety. Then the very thing that used to make socializing feel easier starts making it feel harder. Once that happens, staying home becomes incredibly tempting. Skipping the event feels easier. Canceling feels reasonable. You tell yourself you will make it next time. Maybe you will. Maybe you won't. From personal experience, you can slowly become the unreliable friend, the flaky one, the person who is always down soon and then never actually shows up, the one whose life starts happening mostly indoors. The more chances you pass up to see people, the fewer chances appear later. That is just how adult life works. And if you mostly smoke alone, weed can become the center of gravity in your life. Research shows that many addicted people gradually stop doing activities they once enjoyed because consuming becomes the main event. Bit by bit, this pulls you away from the people around you. That can already be bad in your 20s. In your 30s, it can be catastrophic. By then, most people are not casually collecting new friends anymore. They are investing in a few people they really care about. Their free time is limited, and they guard it. A random night sitting around a joint slips pretty far down the list. So even without any big drama, you can simply become incompatible with the people you grew up with. Especially if weed becomes a core part of your identity while their lives are filling up with other things. This happens without weed too, obviously. But weed can turbocharge it. A lot of problematic users end up orbiting a small circle of people who also smoke heavily. And that can become its own trap. If those people quit or pair off or withdraw into using alone, suddenly you are left with nothing. Or worse, you keep using because you are terrified that quitting will cost you your social life. And making new friends in your 30s is harder. Not impossible, just harder. It takes initiative, energy, patience, and the willingness to be awkward for a while. Exactly the kind of work weed addiction makes more difficult. It gets darker. Loneliness tends to drive people toward more weed. More weed tends to drive more isolation. And around it goes. Weed can start to function like a friend. It is always there. It makes you feel okay for a little while. It asks nothing. It judges nothing. It fills the silence. Until you realize the silence is the whole problem. Your love life can take a hit too. If weed makes you more anxious, more complacent, more comfortable postponing discomfort, then dating becomes easy to avoid. In your 20s, that can already cost you a lot. It does not get easier with time. Inside relationships, addiction can be brutal. Partners of daily users often report feeling neglected. Communication breaks down. Trust erodes. Resentment builds quietly. The addicted person usually thinks things are not that bad because weed is very good at blurring urgency. So they can be blindsided when the relationship finally breaks. And frankly, by your 30s, people want a partner who can help carry adult life. Someone who is present, reliable, engaged, ready to build something. The older you get, the less charming your addiction becomes. But maybe none of that matters if you have a great career. Right? Here is the ugly part. Long-term studies consistently show that heavy weed users are more likely to end up with worse academic performance, less education, lower income, less savings, and less stable employment, even compared with people from similar backgrounds. A lot of people with weed addiction struggle with exactly the things modern work punishes hardest. Showing up, staying focused, following through, managing time, tolerating boredom, finishing unpleasant tasks, doing the thing before it becomes a crisis. So the damage often looks ordinary. You skip the networking event. You half-ass the application. You never quite develop ambition. You bounce between entry-level jobs. You miss the promotion. You arrive just late enough, just tired enough, just detached enough, often enough that life stops opening. And then there is the money. Weed addiction can cost thousands a year. Thousands that do not go into savings, or investments, or travel, or classes, or better housing, or the 1,000 tiny decisions that turn stability into freedom. Your 20s are when you go from being broadly useless to being actually good at something. Your 30s are when people start expecting you to be. That shift is sharp. When you are young, people give you room. They expect some confusion, some flailing, some bad choices. But that grace period ends. The older you get, the more painful it becomes to compare yourself to peers who kept moving. And it is not just career stuff. If you spend 10 or 15 years high most of the time, you do not just lose productivity, you lose growth. You probably traveled less, went out less, met fewer people, took fewer risks, had fewer stories, fumbled your way into fewer adventures, pushed yourself less. In a very real sense, you may simply have lived less. That starts to show. Some studies find that long-term heavy weed users report significantly lower life satisfaction across motivation, goals, relationships, work, and general fulfillment. Your life may just be smaller, less vivid than it could have been, less alive, less funny, less surprising, less earned. And then there is the final layer. Your mental health. This is where weed gets especially sneaky, because at first it can feel like help. It calms you down. It softens anxiety. It blunts loneliness. It turns the volume down on your thoughts. For someone struggling, that can feel like medicine. But weed acts on the brain's reward system. And over time, the relationship can flip. The thing that once seemed to soothe your mind can start making it worse. Heavy use can impair emotional regulation. It can worsen anxiety and depressive symptoms. In vulnerable people, it can feed serious mental health problems. And once that starts happening, there is a cruel temptation to smoke more, to treat the damage with the thing that is helping cause it. So now you are self-medicating with the drug that may be making you more fragile. Your coping skills get weaker. Stress hits harder. Your mood becomes less stable. You feel more irritable, more overwhelmed, less able to handle normal life without a chemical buffer. And a lot of painful emotion gets trapped behind the addiction. That is one of the worst parts. The weed can hold back this reservoir of guilt, fear, loneliness, regret, and self-contempt. Until one day it doesn't. Then it all hits at once. You, and usually the people closest to you, get the full force of everything you have been numbing. And during a real mental health crisis, weed can make things far worse. The good news is that the opposite seems to be true too. Research suggests that addicted people who stop using cannabis often experience noticeable improvements in their mental health. That is the part worth grabbing onto. Because all the losses we have been talking about, the shrinking life, the isolation, the delayed adulthood, the wasted time, the feeling that you are somehow missing your own existence, those are not future problems. They are happening now. Not one day. Today. And if you are addicted, or sliding toward addiction, there is a way out. It is not glamorous. It is not fun. It is not some 10-step aesthetic self-reinvention montage. It is hard. It is annoying. It is emotionally messy. Sometimes it is brutal. But the answer is still the answer. You need to quit. The earlier you do it, the better your life is likely to be. Not because quitting turns you into a different person overnight, but because it gives your actual life a chance to restart. And if that sounds harsh, good. This is one of those situations where harsh is kinder than vague. Weed can be a mild habit. It can also be a life-eating addiction. If you are one of the people in danger, the kindest thing anyone can tell you is this: stop now, while there is still more than enough life left to get back.